So you remember we talked about Pau Olympiacos game 2, and the lineup they had, the closing lineup they had,
Yep.
Olympiacos, because of all the Vezenkov's injury, Walkup being thrown out of the game, Kanan not being played for the series, and Slukas out as well. So, and I after the pod I went to some data, and I found out that before that game, that lineup, that closing lineup of Larenzakis, McKissick, Papanikolaou, Peters, and Fall have not played a single minute in 76 games for Olympiacos this season. And I tweeted this saying that, out for various reasons. This was the closing lineup, and they had played 0 minutes in 76 games. This was a simple tweet, and that they were -5 in the 7 minutes of game. And first there was some, Olympiacos fans, saying, "Oh, this isn't interesting," and then somehow this got to Pau fans, and they were like, some of them were like, "Oh yeah, but we don't have Dwayne Bacon, Andrew Andrews, Matt Thomas, and someone else, another four guys," and I was like, "How is this
Walters?"
And Walters, yeah, exactly. And how is talking about Dwayne Bacon and Andrew Andrews is the same when I'm saying, that Slukas and Vezenkov probably are going to come back, even though I did not mention this. But this was an interesting fact, and I was like, I'm going to tweet it. And obviously, the thought process behind this was that Olympiacos should not be worried after a Game 2 loss, because this is what they had to deal with, even though Pau played a great game there. And I was like, yeah, and I responded, so is Dwayne Bacon coming back for Game 3 and Andrew Andrews are coming back for Games 3 and 4, because Kostas Lukas and Sasha Vezenkov probably are going to come back. So this was, I think, a funny, interaction.
What was the follow-up discussion?
There was no. I just got a few people mocking my last name or whatever that was, and then saying that more than few people writing that Pau are without 4 players, even though 2 players are already away from the team for so long. So, and basically what we saw was, that with Walkup, Vezenkov, and Slukas back, it was a plus 20 game for Olympiacos, and they were dominant more or less the whole game. And
although they kept the distance for a long period of the game, they kept the distance. I mean, they didn't let their hands down. They tried to stay close, at least for the first 3 quarters. But, this whole discussion on Twitter, you cannot call it a discussion. It's like defending some regular, casual tweet from people who take it personal for some reasons and try to defend their team and try to offend you. But it's just a reminder. This tweet was one of the examples, one of the reminders that everyone is not just so sensitive, but it feels like everybody is just too tired from basketball. Look what's happening in Italy. Look at what's happening in Turkey with the post-game celebration and, again, altercation between Ataman, and it turns out there were Fenerbahce management people involved. A lot of tension situations out there.
I wouldn't say it's being tired from basketball. I would say this is just people being tense, super tense,
because they're tired and trying physically and mentally. Two fun facts.
But maybe not from basketball. Maybe from other things in their lives. Because what I saw yesterday in Italy was not people being tired from basketball. Was just people mad at basketball players and just lashing out the whatever inner sadness or whatever you can call it, or inner anger, and then lashing out on the players, and even more.
But the way the players responded, it also shows the fatigue of everything what surrounds basketball. It's not just about the basketball.
The whole atmosphere, you mean? In the basketball world, in the
basketball team, court. That in the middle of June you still have to play in the domestic league finals. I mean, you mentioned this fact about the lineup, and you said in 76 games this lineup haven't logged a single minute. 76 games in European basketball with all these tensions, with all these emotions, with all this pressure coming from everywhere, ownership, head coach, fans, media, everything. We can actually already, compare the schedule of European basketball with the NBA, but what NBA doesn't have, that kind of amount of pressure on all the things that come together with the regular season or just the length of the season. It's just crazy that I have this fact that the Spanish league season has started 3 weeks prior to the start of the NBA season, and they still haven't started the ACB finals. It's just stupid, really.
The NBA will finish this week.
Yeah, exactly. And NBA might finish tonight, maybe? Yeah. So it's just stupid, and it's not just about the injuries, the length of the season. It's just about being mentally drained from all the other things that include being a basketball player. So it's tough. And then they're gonna have national team competition again with these huge expectations, and training camp, crazy head coaches, pressure again.
But you're talking more about the players. I'm talking more about the atmosphere around the game. Like the people that are following basketball, the fans that go to the gym, because it doesn't look nice what happened in Milano, but the first, the guy who starts it is the fan who pushes, touches, or whatever that was, Milos Teodosic. Without that, nothing happens. Virtus players just go to the locker room just like they always do. And everybody is just talking about a basketball game and Milano winning game 2 in a really close competition. And what happens after that is, just the consequence of that push by a person who thought, hey, it's okay to touch an opposing player while he's going to the tunnel. Like I paid for the ticket, I can shout the whole game, but I can also touch and shove a player. Why would you want to do that? You won. You shouldn't be tired or sad or have this anger and have the necessity to touch an opposing player. That's the anger I'm talking about more from the people that come to watch games, because you are not allowed to do that. You can just have fun, clap for your team, boo the other team, and then that's it.
Again, when I think about the bigger picture, give me another example what's similar to be a basketball fan, to be in a basketball game situation where you come to the event, you curse the players, you show the middle finger, you touch the player, suddenly this 2-hour event becomes something where you're not getting sanctioned for bad things you're doing. And it feels like in the basketball game, I'm going to repeat myself for the 100 times. You can start throwing things on the court. You can, verbally or even physically attack the players. I cannot see any other similar event as a basketball or football game, let's say, where, being undisciplined, being violent, or being just rude is kind of accepted or at least not punished. I don't know any
it becomes a sporting event of basketball and football, because you don't see this in tennis, for example. A basketball or football game kind of becomes an event, a platform to lash out your anger that you have.
Exactly, anger, not emotions. Emotions is a bad word. Anger, and people have different kind of anger, because of their personal reasons, work, family, something going on, and they just lash it out in a basketball event, which is bad, unacceptable.
Do we have anything to add on that situation?
Not just this situation. Jonathan Motley responded to a fan who blamed him for putting a story with a glass of wine after losing the semifinals against FS, saying that...
after winning game 1.
Oh, after winning game 1. Oh, okay.
I think it was the story posted after winning game 1, and after they lost, I think that fan posted a story, said that, if you cared more, something like that. I'm not sure, but I think it was like that. It went like this. But it's just...
there was also a tweet by Will Clyburn there was a very interesting tweet where he was saying, fans really be saying crazy as disrespectful shit to players, but then want to call you disrespectful and classless. That's wild. He had his moments with Fenerbahce fans as well. So yeah, it's very nervous time of the season. But
True.
Yeah, just to come back to this altercation or whatever that happened here in Milan, I blame the fan. I think that the fan should be banned to enter Mediolanum Forum for life. Again, the same happened in Lithuania with one fan spilling some beer on Margiris Normantas, Ritas player. That should be like life sentence for you to attend the basketball game. If you cannot control yourself, if you act like as a pig, the basketball game is not a farm. The basketball gym is not a farm. You shouldn't be allowed to come here and to let yourself to do things like that. So the same here. You cannot touch the player. That's the rule number one. Tons of people already, showing middle fingers, cursing the players, and then you're even touching, starting this altercation. That's stupid. Then that's dangerous. At the same time, I also think that Miloš Teodosic and Daniel Hackett has to take full responsibility and full blame for what he did, because I think it was out of proportions. Because you're not just kind of attacking, let's say, bad basketball fan, rude basketball fan. There was women close to that guy. There was Kevin Pango's family, wife with a small baby, in her hands, close. And when they start doing this pushing thing, all the women were just like, falling down. So
I don't know. From what I saw,
it's dangerous, man.
I might be wrong, but Pangos' wife actually tried going near the player and then saying something to him.
It happened later, but when it all started, again, there were like 3 women close to that situation, and I saw that a couple of them, kind of fall down. Let's say they were involved in a bad way, from these consequences of what happened later. So, I know you're mad. I know that this fan crossed his line, and you're protecting your teammate, or you're protecting yourself, or you're just responding to the guy who was acting rude with you. But at the same time, it's not all about you and that guy. There were people around involved, so you have to be more careful, and you have to come out as a winner and smarter from that situation. So I understand their anger, but you should control yourself better.
There are no saints in this situation, but the whole thing got started by that guy shoving the player. So again, you can understand the response by Hackett. And Teodosic would love to have more security, to not even
true.
To not even allow this situation to happen, to not be able to touch the player, because it was actually so easy to do. So that's why it was so tempting.
Probably it was the single area when can actually
exactly
approach you or even touch you, and I didn't see any security on that specific corner and spot.
Talking about the game, Olympia Virtus.
Yeah.
Just some things I wanted to notice. A dogfight. Both teams can defend. Both teams have players that can really aggressively play some defense. Bologna really started the game nicely with Shengelia and Jaite, scoring, let's say, from the paint. Milano obviously basing their offense on the weak links, trying to attack through Bellinelli, involving Teodosic as much as they can. Virtus more or less doing the same thing, trying to attack Napier through the post by Paiola playing with the back to the basket. Daniel Hackett doing the same. I think he finished the game with 8 assists, 4 points. I think it's a big question going forward in the series. Can he make the open shots Milano are giving? But it's so nice to see Shavon Shields, in shape, back again, healthy. He's a game changer for Milano. But that 5 of Napier, Barron, Shields, Voigtman, and Melli, because probably Melli is playing more like a center in that starting line in that lineup, I think is illegal when they're all healthy. And it has everything you can ask from my point of view offensively. Let's say you have ball handling from Napier. Barron can also do that. You have a movement shooter. Barron can make set plays for him. You have 2 ISO players in Shields and Napier. Even you can call maybe 2.5. Barron can sometimes,
Yeah.
We saw him when these 2 were not healthy. We saw Barron maybe in December. It was a great run from him when he was a lot with his with the ball in his hands. And then you have front court players who can if the opposing team switch, they can punish you. Melli can sometimes play through the post against a smaller guy. Voigtman has great size, so if you put a point guard against him, he can score from there, even though he doesn't want really to do that. And so you can run actions depending who is a weak link, because you have so much options here. So, for example, I saw Daniel Hackett defending Barron. Or Daniel Hackett defending Napier. So you run the action through Barron. Hackett goes on Barron, you play through Napier. Or Teodosic is
because usually Teodosic is on somebody.
Or there's also Bellinelli. Bellinelli steps on the court, you play through Siobhan Shields because maybe you run through the screens or whatever. They might try to hide Teodosic. You run the action through him. So it's just amazing. Balance in the offense with this 5, so many options. And then I went to look at some data, and this is actually their most used lineup this season.
Okay.
And at the same time, it's the best lineup as well. And according to Instat, they are plus 70 in 147 minutes together. And in this series, it's also, it's only 2 games, but they are plus 12 with this lineup.
But you said that this is the most used lineup this season with Napier on it?
Yeah.
When Shabazz Napier joined Milan at the end of January, it tells a lot about the season they had. The guy who joined the team at the end of January is on the most used lineup. Wow, that's huge.
And they're scoring 1.12 points per possession. And they are allowing 0.97. So that's a kind of a big difference. And it's just so fun to watch on the offense. Like there was one possession, I think in the 4th quarter, if I'm not mistaken, where it's just Napier creating the advantage to Melli on the short roll. And then Melli is like looking at the other options because the defense rotates. Boom, a kick out to Voigtman, who is standing on a 3-point line, extra pass, and Napier just finds the ball back to himself, completely wide open shot. Amazingly, like if this lineup was available for the whole season, which we might see in the next year, it's just so fun to watch on offense, especially.
Yeah, that's the main thing, because they're trying to keep Shabazz Napier. Of course, Shields is also on an expiring contract, but Milan will try to do everything to keep him as well. Billy Barron is set to continue. You mentioned Voigtman and Nicola Melli. And this is an interesting thing, which I already told you before the podcast. So they're finalizing a contract with Ismail Kamagate, which is a surprising deal happening, because first of all, I didn't see him going to that level so fast. At first, the idea was him joining Alba, which makes perfect sense. Let's say Komaji is leaving, Kamagate is coming, Kamagate is still...
Komaji is leaving.
It sounds like that. And, it feels like it's a great replacement. It's a very young guy who still needs a lot of playing time, who needs responsibility at the highest level, trust from the coaching staff, a lot of minutes, experience. And, it's a great move both for Kamagate and Nuggets, because they were not, since they're about to win the championship probably, and since they're title competitors, it's not like they have flexibility to play guys like Kamagate in the NBA. They're looking for some instant help to win the title. So it was not like Kamagate was in their plans for the following year. So Alba Berlin, coming from Paris basketball, Alba Berlin getting huge minutes in the EuroLeague, it sounds like a perfect plan. And then Milan comes from nowhere. And it looks weird. So who is replacing? And my first idea was is Kyle Hines retiring? Because, Kamagate is also that hustle guy, rebounder, roller, which, can add some help in the paint. There's Kyle Hines and...
probably for Paul Biliga.
But Biliga is a local player, so I thought Biliga's his role on the team was probably to help them in the domestic league. And Kamagate is a foreigner, so how are they gonna play out this situation with imports?
They started the season, I think, with Voigtman designed to play the 5 position, the center. But for quite some time now, he's playing at the 4. You always see him with Melli or Hines in the same 5, and he's playing more the 4 position in offense, and so that's why I think they're keeping Hines. They will have Kamagate as well, and they will play Melli.
And from what I hear, they like to play Melli at the 5, so they have this lineup of this 3, let's say, centers. There's Voigtman as well, and I heard that they're looking for a big man power forward. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the guy who can also play multiple positions, as a lot of players on Messina's squad. So I just had this question, what type of big man and frontline addition do you see working out, the best fit for Milan, knowing their ambitions, their goals, and what would be the perfect fit, on Messina's lineups?
Maybe I wouldn't try to bring... It's actually an interesting question. Like, who do you go with more of a center? Or because, Kyle Hines is not getting any younger, you see him probably playing less and less each year. So do you go with a center, more of who can maybe score by himself? Because neither Hines nor Kamagate can do that.
And Davis is leaving, so there's this gap scoring in the post.
I thought, Davis is already... basically Messina mentioned that he's not going to be there. He's not going to continue by saying that you are excluded from the team for the playoffs.
And just in general, he's on the market and he's for sure leaving Milan.
I wouldn't like look for a high caliber player, because knowing the rotation depth in Milan, maybe a player who is used to playing 25-30 minutes wouldn't be happy if his playing time is reduced. Maybe that wouldn't boost his confidence. So I would go for a lower profile guy, but who can do some things at a really high level. Maybe a post scorer who could give you some nice periods in offense. This is what they lacked, I think, this season when some of the perimeter guys were out with injuries. So I'm either a 4 or either a 5 position guy, but who can maybe score from the post, but not the high profile name.
Okay,
because you are already
or somebody who's at that stage of his career who can sacrifice his minutes to win titles. Just like, for example, Mario Hezonja did. When they won the title, he told me that I joined this club for a reason. I was ready, to sacrifice my role, but I understood that this is a group of winners and I'll have to do some different things, to help the team win. So at some point, these players, they understand what they need the most. Some want some great paychecks. Someone enjoy basketball, playing freely a lot of minutes. Some just want to win titles. Everyone has their own priorities. So it depends on at what kind of stage the potential addition could be. But that's interesting, the thing you mentioned, because I cannot mention names yet. It's too early, or it's something that we are, as a BasketNews teams, are working on for a report. But I've actually heard a couple of names that fit very different profile of players that could, benefit. It's funny that you mentioned that. I'm not sure if I would add a F5 or a center, although you wish or you would like to have the power forward more, right? But I heard...
even not sure. I would probably think of, what's on the market, the names we are, we have the budget for to get, and then just try to imagine the big picture and see what happens. Because right now, with what Milano have in their front line, there's just so much versatility and different lineups you can throw that you basically just go with what fits best your team or what potential lineups you can think of with this, fifth player in the front court, fifth or sixth, whatever that is, because they still have some more guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go post scorer.
For instance, there's
or a shooter.
As he's a free agent, one of the names that would fit that profile, I guess. But from what I heard, there are different players that could join Milan, so it's going to be interesting to see. And they're very different, as I mentioned. Center and a power forward. One power forward that I would say fits your profile that you mentioned. And that I think that would be a great addition, but a lot of things have to be sorted out before it can happen. So it's going to be interesting what they're going to do. My 2 cents, what I think about the series. I watched the last 5 minutes of the game too, because there's a lot of stuff happening during the weekend. We also had amazing LKL finals game 5. One of the probably the best game 5s I've seen in Lithuania. 2 minutes to play and you don't know who are going to win the game. There's the MVP scoring 32 points. A lot of was happening there. So
Isaiah Taylor, shout out to him for the performance in this series. It's going to be interesting to see where he's going next, because he finished the season really strong.
Over 20 points in the last 4 games of the final series. That's huge. Even in Lithuania, you can rarely see numbers that he provided, and he was unguardable one-on-one. So a lot of stuff happened, and I just saw the very end of the game, and Virtus made this great comeback at the end of the game, but you can blame nobody else than yourself when you score like 2 free throws when you're 2 from 6 from free throw line. I think that Shengelia missed like 3 from 4 or something, and it was the moment where they can actually take the lead. They made some great defensive styles, but couldn't convert from the free throw line. As I mentioned, I mean, it's great to see Shawan Shields back. He was huge with this 3-pointer to give them the lead.
Man, I didn't understand why Semi Ojale went under that off-ball screen. It was such an easy, it seemed such it wasn't even like an action trying to get him a score immediately. Like, it was supposed to be a continuation to something else, but Shawan Shields get this open. He jumps on that shot fake and then it's like spins away, that do a 360 on defense. That's never a good thing. And then Shawan Shields just hits that free. I was like, okay.
And I just like how Shawan Shields, he kind of reminds me of Luka Doncic, because he's not an athletic freak. He's not the fastest guy on the court, but the way he manages to involve his defender in his own zone, in his own pace, where he creates those advantages, whether it's on a perimeter or inside the paint, that's huge. And it's just great to see Shawan Shields healthy and doing his thing. So he's going to be a huge, very important player for Milan following year, if they're going to find the agreement, which I think that they will.
Do we talk about Olympiacos and Pau a little more?
Yeah, the most anticipated series among our fans, for sure. Unfortunately, the game wasn't as exciting as it was before. The first two games.
Two games were
and there's probably
really interesting.
A very simple explanation for that. Not just because Olympiacos is a better team in general, but when you watch Panathinaikos, I mean, if they're not making shots and they're really limited at making shots from the perimeter, they're basically done. Because inside the paint, you always face Mustafa Fall or, Bolomboy. Olympiacos defense, they pack the paint, and it's really hard to score out there. And as a Lithuanian, I really feel bad for Arturas Gudaitis for the work he has to do on both ends of the floor. It's really tough to play Olympiacos, and especially when they had so many situations, late clock situations, where they just had to make those contested 3-pointers that it's either you make those shots or you are done, because they can probably create only from transition, from pick and roll sometimes, throwing these lobs for Papagiannis, but with the, primary scorers, your first options as Marius Grigonis or Mateusz Panitka, you're just really limited. And although we are not the fans of Dwayne Bacon, right? Not just not his. I'm not talking about his skill, but we're talking about his body language or the way he used his skill. But he would probably add a lot to this Panathinaikos squad facing Olympiacos in the finals, because there were just these situations where they couldn't score at all, and that's I think that's huge. I mean, in game one, there are these stats. Their 3-point shooting percentage in game one was 25%. In game 3, 22%, and the game they won. Game 2, they scored from the free by 40%. So again, if they're making some lucky shots, if they're making some tough shots, as Mateusz Ponitka hit that step back, they have a chance. If not, when those guys are healthy, especially when Vezenkov is making off-board shots or Dirk Nowitzki shots, when Slukas is playing his own zone as well, it's just impossible for them to beat Olympiacos because they're just better, and that's it.
I agree with you that they are better. I mean, probably even Panathinaikos fans can see that the Olympiacos are just way better this season. But I wouldn't agree that Bacon would add a lot in offense, but I'm way more loving how Panathinaikos playing defense right now.
I would love to have Bacon only for these late clock situations, not for everything around or prior or after.
But you can't. It doesn't work that way, But yeah, Pau basically won game 2 because they were able to ignite their offense by playing great defense. I think they had a lot of steals in that game, a lot of easy transition layups.
Yeah, that's the way.
It was a low scoring game, so they were able to do it. In this game, you have Mustafa Fall in the paint, you have Paris Lee, Marius Grigonis trying to create in those pick and rolls, and they were not having. Paris Lee had a
in the beginning, he was
game.
Good. Yeah.
He played 8 times the pick and roll, and he played more times pick and roll, but he finished with his shots 8 times the pick and roll, and he scored 11 points. That's 1.38 points per pick and roll when he is shooting. So that's a great number. Marius Grigonis, as a pick and roll ball handler, played 4 times and finished it with his own shot. 0 points on 4 tries. Plus one time he missed a shot in an off-screen situation, and one time he missed on the shot when he was beat the closeout and drove. So that's 6 situations where he is driving the ball, dribbling the ball, and then finishing by shooting, and he was 0 from 6. He scored, I think, 11, 5 points in transition, and 6 points on catch and shoot opportunities. So transition or catch and shoot, 0 points on 6 tries when he is a ball handler. And, he just couldn't deal with Thomas Walkup. He couldn't deal with, Mustafa Fall being there in the paint. Grigonis as a ball handler in this series is averaging 0.46 points per possession. That's terrible because usually you're looking, at 0.9 pick and roll ball handling, 0.91 point. And Paris Lee was good in game 3, but he is 0.78 as a ball handler. So that just tells you how it is difficult to score against, pick and roll where Mustafa Fall is defending the paint and Thomas Walkup, or Mikalis Lountzis, who was great on defense in this game and also gave some points on offense. So it's really hard to score, and as we said in the podcast before, Panathinaikos need a first scoring option.
Yeah.
To find
even first or second scoring option
for the next season. And but just I wanted to shout out, Lountzis for his defense. I think Walkup and Lountzis in the same 5 are unfair on the defensive side. It is just a headache to play against those two everywhere, on close on every handoff situation, trying to poke the ball. And that's why, Grigonis and Ponitka or Paris Lee have to really try hard to score against those two.
Yeah. Anything to add about that game? I think there was less drama than the previous games.
Yeah, because it was
no yogurt attacks. Although I think I read somewhere that there were actually some kind of attacks. I just don't remember in what form.
I'm not sure. It was interesting to see as well, with the new coach, how Derek Williams' role has changed.
And it has reduced, no?
I think he stepped into the game in the middle of the second quarter. Then he started the second half, but he's not playing as much.
He doesn't feel good in that role. You can obviously see it.
He's not involved in the offense as much as he was. Do you remember him having those 2 crazy third quarters in the EuroLeague?
20 straight point games.
Something like that when he was just basically scoring by himself. He's running around without the ball, and it makes you wonder why does that happen? What changed? Or maybe just the coaches are so different, and they prefer him being used different. But it's just interesting to see and try to understand why is that happening. And Olympiacos, in my eyes, basically won the game with a 16-2 run in the second quarter. Slukas doing his job once again, and just on that pick and roll, creating everything. Larenzakis, I think, had 2 scores from nothing. One, he got an offensive rebound after his missed shot. The other, he scored from a baseline out of bounds play. McKissick had a dunk on a post up for Mustafa Fall, and that's it. Oh, and Mustafa Fall finally missed a shot in the series. He was 10 for 10 in the first 2 games, and he was actually averaging. He was tied for the first place in assists per game average.
Nice.
He was having 4.5 assists in the first 2 games, and Thomas Walkup had the same. So you can imagine the impact he is having on this series.
My spicy highlight of the game was Agravanis showing too small after he scored on Alec Peters, I think. Of course, it was a tough layup because I think that he got some, aggressive defense. Maybe it was Papa Nicolau, I don't remember. Then I think that he spinned, he faced Peters. It was a tough layup. But Panathinaikos, they were like down by 11 in the third quarter, I guess, and you were showing too small. I mean,
these too small are getting out of hand.
yeah. You should save these too small situations for important, shots, game-winning situations.
So they mean more?
Crunch time. At the same time, it's good that players express themselves,
Yeah,
I love those antics.
I love the trash talking.
That's great. That just adds some passion, spiciness to the game. But the timing, it could be different probably.
Yeah. More of that, maybe. Yeah, maybe when the game is closer. But I like the mentality. I like the trash talking. So
Agravanis is a
keep
baller.
doing that. Keep doing that.
Agravanis is an interesting guy to watch.
Keep doing that.
That's for sure.
French League
finals. We decided to give some attention to put French League finals on the spotlight because, of course, there's Wembanyama, the next first pick of the NBA draft.
Oh, you could just say there's your team Monaco playing there.
Not at all. And
we should maybe put more highlight on the semifinal that he won because the game 1 was.
That's because
52-21 the score was at one point, I think.
They entered the halftime with Monaco being up by 31 points, 52-21. And I think that for Wembanyama, it's the worst matchup that he can ever face in European basketball. I'm talking about John Brown because he's such a pain in the ass. And, since we also spoke about it on our, way to the LKL finals. I mean, since Wembanyama cannot post, John Brown, although he's like, he can be exposed on the low post in the EuroLeague by some bigger post-up players, he's a perfect matchup to defend Wembanyama because he can get under your skin. He can chase you throughout the whole game for 40 minutes. He's always, involving these dirty plays in his game. He always grabbing you, elbowing you, grabbing your jersey. It does everything to put yourself out of the game. He even box you out when the ball is on a different place on the court. And you could see that Wembanyama felt really uncomfortable playing Monaco's defense. And I remember even Rokos Jokubaitis saying, I think it was that game when John Brown made 7 steals maybe the last season. It feels like John Brown is everywhere on the court. Even when you're facing a different player in the pick and roll, it feels like there's this ghost of John Brown everywhere. And I feel that Wembanyama also had this, migraine from John Brown experience. Because Wembanyama, first of all, he scored 8 points on
3 of 8. 3 of 8 shooting.
3 of 8 shooting. He tied his season low with these 8 points. And what's interesting that the previous season low, 8 points, was also against Monaco. The only single-digit games that he had in the French league. 7 rebounds, also pretty low number for Wembanyama, and especially the numbers he was delivering recently. And the 4 points he scored until the fourth quarter came from 2 free throws and 1 off-board mid-range jumper, which was over Makondu. And I think that Wembanyama didn't score a single point when John Brown was on the court. So that's why it's the worst matchup for Wembanyama, and that's why it's the best matchup for Sasha Obradovic, because you have Mike James. And after he finished his EuroLeague season, I had some arguable doubts about his commitment in the French League playoffs. But when you face Wembanyama, when you face Metropolitans, the final series, they're on NBA app. So KD is watching, your friends are watching, Americans might tune in and watch that game. And what kind of Mike James we see in the finals? He was amazing in the first quarter. Either he was scoring some really tough shots, or he was really creating some amazing situations for his teammates. Some really good passing, especially when you're drawing and at some point I saw that all 5 defenders were concentrating on stopping Mike James when he was penetrating, and he was kicking the ball out so great and putting his teammates on such a great situations that he played really good game. It was like maybe 12 points, nothing special for Mike scoring wise, but 8 assists and 22 minutes per game. It was awesome, and I expect that kind of Mike James for the entire series.
12 plus 8 is a solid line considering the game was a blowout since the halftime. Yeah. Nobody played big minutes in Monaco. I don't really see this series being a long series. Competitive to me. Maybe it's just one game. Maybe it's a bit too early to overreact. But
that's for sure.
I will say it this way. I think it just shows the disparity French League has between Monaco and all the other teams, especially with as well this season. Completely, being wrong with their let's say team building, with their choices, how they went. I mean, it wasn't wrong. It was just that last season they had Elie Okobo and Chris Jones, and so they were really carrying the load. And this year, they did not manage to replace them with as great players as those two were. Plus, Wembanyama leaving as well, going to Metropolitans. Plus, them signing Joffrey Lauvergne, who gets injured immediately and misses all the season. So, with as well in such a weak spot, let's say for this season, there is basically no team who can match Monaco in my eyes in the series. I don't think that's possible. So the gap is huge. Metropolitans were a really great regular season team, but I just don't see them in a series where Monaco are concentrated, focused on winning the French League title. I just don't see them having any chance. I mean, Metropolitans had it, especially when Wembanyama they won, but he did not really have an amazing series against us. Well, it was okay. Charles Cahoudi was his matchup. He's a similar guy to John Brown. Even an undersized power forward, maybe 20 plus centimeters smaller than Wembanyama, but just tough, physical. And Wembanyama was playing like a no dribble basketball because just of the strength and let's say point of weight being so much lower of Kahudi. So he cannot really be in balance when Kahudi is giving him, all that pressure. And he showed obviously his talent, his potential, his upside. But even against switches, even against Obasohan or Jonah Matthews, he wasn't able to post them up, and he was trying to shoot, fadeaway shots because he still lacks strength, and that's normal because he's a guy who's only 19 years old. But against the EuroLeague team, it's a huge disadvantage to have.
Yeah, and I liked the mentality of Monaco. They looked like they were playing, I wouldn't call it a playoff game because there were two different phases even in the playoff series against Maccabi, but it looked like they were very serious for the reasons I also mentioned. Even for John Brown, it's a great challenge for him. He also knows that everybody watches him.
Come on.
And you're playing the first draft pick, so for sure he's going to tell these stories to his, kids and,
Imagine Wembanyama goes on to have an amazing NBA career, maybe becoming an MVP of the league. Like, we don't know it yet. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but he has the potential. All this hype is maybe a little bit over the top, but he is a unique prospect that's coming out and going to the NBA right now. So imagine for Monaco players as well, you might be facing a guy who will be an NBA superstar, and now you have a chance to beat him in the French League finals.
So that's why Sasha Obradovic's job is a bit easier in these final series, because it's really hard to keep your team focused in the middle of June. But the last point I wanted to tell you that, we saw EuroLeague Monaco and we saw very average Metropolitans. It felt like they were not ready, and for sure we can expect for a reaction on Monday night. Actually, they're playing very soon, and I'm just curious to see how Wembanyama gonna react to the situation. For sure, he gonna adjust. For sure, he gonna take this lesson from his first experience against John Brown, and it will be interesting to see how he gonna try to face this adversity of John Brown and the physicality of Monaco. I don't expect any surprises, but I just believe that the game 2 will be way closer than this one.
It's hard to expect, again, 30-point lead by Monaco after 2 quarters. Even though they are much stronger, but I just think Metropolitans are going to give a bigger fight to them than in game 1. And it will be interesting to see how they try to use Wembanyama, how Vincent Collet maybe is going to adjust a little bit. Because you can see that with the ball, when he gets the ball in an ISO situation, whether that's a post-up, whether that's an ISO on the perimeter, it's really hard for him. It was really hard for him already in the semifinals. So maybe try to use him more in off-ball situations where he gets just catch the ball and shoot.
Yeah.
You obviously try to go in the transition as much as possible, but you need to first get some stops that they were not getting in the first half. So let's see what happens.
And the last domestic league event that we want to discuss is Fenerbahce losing to Efes. Efes advanced to the semifinals after winning the series in 4 games. We kind of expected that Fenerbahce gonna force the game 5.
They didn't.
It feels like I have this feeling, and maybe it's the recency bias, because we saw a couple of late game situations where FS won against Fenerbahce. We probably all remember this game, playoff series, Fenerbahce Olympiacos, Kostas Slukas game winner. We all remember the last game of the regular season against Red Star, where Fenerbahce almost blew up the playoff spot, and it feels like they were so unlucky at late game situations, because even in this game 4, even though Meli Momotoglu was really hot in that game, he scored some big 3-pointers. For me, it's really weird to see him as the first option offensively, trying to score after dribble with like 90 seconds to play, and let's say Fenerbahce, they were down by 3 points. So the two sequences, the two possessions they had ended up with Mamlotoglu taking a difficult contested shot after the dribble when Wilbekin or Gudric was on the court, doing nothing. And basically, it's not like it was a late clock situation. There were like 10, 11, 12 seconds to play in that possession. And the following possession was where Marko Gudric tried to play a pick and roll with Jonathan Motley, and he just sent the ball out of bounds. It was very unlucky, very, I would say, sluggish pick and roll situation. So that's how they their chances to try to beat FS were decided in these two late game situations with very poor execution. So
he made some crazy shots before. Just to say, I did not watch the game. I'm just looking at Mamlotoglu clips from the fourth quarter, because all of his shots apparently came in the fourth quarter, and he hit those three pointers really tough.
And that's what he's able of doing, hitting crazy 3-pointers. But again, to see him trying to score after dribble, I know I want some better situations.
I just saw the drive against Will Clyburn.
Yeah, and so you know what I mean.
I can understand, them trying to play, and he misses one more spot up against Will. But this is like with 25 seconds remaining. I can understand them trying to play. He's made 3-pointers, and then you play through the hot hand. But obviously, if you don't have a shot, you can probably flow into a continuation. But I guess Meli just, instead of playing a pick and roll or giving the ball back to Guduric, he just chooses to drive left against Clyburn. I don't know what he's expecting from this, but you probably can flow into a better shot than this. But on the other hand, he has the hot hand, made 3-pointers, 3-point game as well. Wow.
Yeah, another high scoring game, which is win for FS. Amazing game by some of the core players like Micic, 27 points, Elijah Bryant.
You said he was having a great series, and then he went out and scored even more.
He scores 25 points on 10 from 13 from the field, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. Wow.
2 steals.
Wow, that's huge. That's huge.
How would you evaluate Fenerbahce's season? Losing the semifinals.
Of course, they were unlucky with the matchup in the semifinals. It's not like another day in the office when you face FS in the semifinals, because FS were failing in the regular season.
You could also say, were they unlucky with the matchup in the EuroLeague quarterfinals?
I think that was a consequence of
they played themselves.
Second part of the regular season.
They played themselves into that.
Yeah, so you cannot blame luck in this case. I mean, I have very mixed feelings. It's, from one point of view, it's the beginning of the new project with Vitudis, with a lot of new guys on the team. At the same time, there were examples previously of some projects building from scratch. For instance, Monaco team built from scratch. FS, when they made the Final Four after finishing the last previous season, they also built a team from scratch. So it's possible to create a team from scratch and to achieve some good results. At the same point, there were situations like injuries, a lot of injuries. Nemanja Bjelica, who was supposed to be one of the key players of that team, he barely played this year. Unfortunately, I really want to see him play in the EuroLeague. And now probably his future in the Fener or even on the top EuroLeague level maybe be in jeopardy because of the injury he had, and he's like 35 or something. So it's not easy to come back to the highest level after basically missing the whole year. So I don't know. At the same time, you see guys like Nigel Hayes-Davis stepping up big time. You see guys like Nick Kalates had a great first part of the season. Jonathan Motley made a really promising EuroLeague debut. Deshaun Pierre, amazing season. So a lot of players developed, a lot of players stepped up. And it's also, the consequence of the process that you're trying to build. We had this discussion about the achievements and results in the last pod. So who you evaluate more, who you prioritize more, the final result or the process. But you see some glimpses both in the process and you see some glimpses both in the standings, results, and box score. So I don't know. It's a weird feeling that I have about Fenerbahce.
Okay, I think it's fair. Even though I would say...
I'm neither happy, neither disappointed.
Okay.
Let's say somewhere in the middle.
I mean, I would be more willing to go to that I'm happy about the season part. Like, I'm not super happy because of the way it finished. You know, you lose in the Turkish League semifinals against, you know, Anadolu Efes. You lose to Olympiacos after a great fight, but you were still 8th in the EuroLeague. But in my eyes, to a team that had a new coach coming in, that had some EuroLeague rookies coming in, Motley, Edwards, you know, they signed Dorsey for last 2 months of the season. So a lot of new guys coming in as well, you know, to the team with the new coach. I think it was an okay season, you know, to start the process. You can see that there is a structure in the team that have, you know, you have guys that you are going to build around. You right now just need to maybe adjust the roster a little bit. You don't need to, you know, you don't need to call this a failure and say we are selling all those players. No, I think they are a couple of moves away from being a real contender like Olympiacos, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Monaco this year, where basically those 4 teams were from the start of the season. They were, you know, more or less those 4 teams that
Milan. My favorite Milan.
No. I'm saying, you know, when you started playing already, you know, after 1 month, those 4 teams were always more or less
consistently on the top.
Yeah, between the first 5. And Fener, after the impressive start of the season, they were kind of went down, and the season after that was, you know, uphill, you know, up and down all the time. So just change, you know, adjust the roster in a few spots, and I think Fener can contend for the EuroLeague title next year, because you know that they're going to be prepared extremely well for every game with Itudis.
Speaking of changes, let's start from the biggest names where the changes might kick in.
In Fener?
Yeah, sorry, I cannot remember the first initial source of that information, but there was a tweet that said that there was a report that said that Tyler Dorsey might leave the team. And from what I heard, I think it's a possibility. And that's where I have this question, you know, what kind of guard, what kind of replacement you're looking for Tyler Dorsey? Because there are 2 ways. You either go for a more of a point guard type of player, or you go for a scorer. Because on the market, you can find players like, okay, Darius Thompson, he's under the contract, but let's say there's a chance to pay a buyout and to get him for your team. There's also Kevin Pangos. Interesting choice. And let's not forget, when Pangos signed the contract with CSKA just before the war, basically at the same day the war has started, Itudis was the head coach of that team. So he wanted that player, and he saw the way he could execute him on that team. So it would make sense if there's this window open of bringing him to Fenerbahce. I would see this, you know, this situation. From the, you know, on a different side, there's also players like Kevin Punter available. Probably you'll have to spend more on that kind of player, on probably the hottest free agent this summer. But these are very 2 different type of players you can try to choose from.
I don't, you know, knowing that Wilbekin is there, and if you have Pangos as well, you have 2 really, you know, undersized guards in your lineup. Let's say if they play together, you have 2 players already, two targets on the defense for the other team. Even though I'm not saying they're bad defenders, but they are just, you know, small. And So I would probably prefer a taller scoring guard. I don't know, Corey Higgins.
Okay.
If he's going out,
If he's healthy.
if he's healthy, a guy who can score and who can defend, because I think they really need a great player here. And because if you're playing with Nick, you obviously need someone who can score. But if you're playing with Scotty, you need a taller guy who can, defend the two position. So I think it's Fenerbahce will have to spend some money on this. It would make sense, if Ituris, like as you mentioned, if Ituris wanted him in Moscow and he actually signed him, it would make sense for him to, maybe try to do the same thing again. But I'm not sure. Pangos would be probably the best fit right now of all the available options for Fener. What's your opinion on this?
I don't know. I also have kind of, mixed feelings, and I really trust the coaching staff. As I mentioned, after the year one, they noticed and they felt what they need more. And there was always this feeling actually that maybe they preferred a point guard type of player or a combo guard who's more of a point guard than a shooting guard, than a scorer. So that's why maybe it didn't turn out to be the best fit as Tyler Dorsey joined the team during the season. At that point of the season, it was, rational decision to try to upgrade your team with probably the best player available on the market. But looking for the future, it felt like that they were also feeling that there's more of a need of a point guard. At the same time, you have Nikolaitis in the playoffs, even in the semifinals against Fenerbahce, against Efes, when I said that he missed 2 open 3-pointers, and he was always used as a mismatch in the offense situations. So you don't want to leave yourself in that situation again, right? And you might think about the improvement in that area where you could bring some other point guard on the court for these kind of moments of the season. And you have Marko Guduric as a ball handler who had a really great season this year. So it's a tough question, but if you have a chance to sign Kevin Punter, I mean, that's very hard to turn down. So I don't know.
So it actually depends on, do you think Scotty, if you sign a guard scorer, so do you play Scotty as one?
Mm-hmm.
So one thought came to my mind right now. Darius Thompson would make a lot of sense. Like a tall guard who can play point guard, but who can score as well.
Yeah.
And on the defense, then Scotty could guard the point guard and Darius could guard the shooting guard.
Yeah.
So, the profile is similar to Darius Thompson, what we're looking here, because is Carson Edwards staying? What do you think?
It didn't work out. I think it was kind of pre-programmed.
I don't know if it didn't work out. I mean, what did you expect? 20 points per game? 15 points per game?
I just didn't see trust toward Carson Edwards. And I mean,
exactly.
I just think that Carson Edwards needed a different environment for him, for his rookie season especially.
For a coach who would be okay with his mistakes, but he went to Fenerbahce, who have the highest goals, and Ituris, always wants perfection.
Yeah. And he's
Carson
still far
Edwards,
from perfection. He's that wild type of player that requires different environment for him to shine, or at least allow him to make mistakes. So yeah, he had some great stretches, and I think that he will take a lot of good things from this whole experience. I mean, being coached by Ituris, it's a huge thing, and I think it will benefit a lot for him, and he will be moving forward maybe to some different team. So yeah, but the main adjustments they will also do is the front line as well. I think that they're gonna try to replace Nemanja Bjelica. Or again, if they will be sure that Nemanja Bjelica will be ready to start the season, that's great. That's a great upgrade because they didn't have real Nemanja Bjelica this season. And of course, they might be looking for a backup or for a 20-minute center to add something next to Jonathan Motley. So these are the biggest adjustments they might make.
They need someone to give some rest time to Nigel Hayes. The guy was playing 55 minutes per game for the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Anyway,
just the last question I had for you on this podcast. We mentioned some of these guys. I know that we didn't prepare for this, but if you were the GM, what would be your top 5 or top 3 free agents ranking in Europe? Let's say we have, Mirotic is not a free agent, but he's on the market. There's, let's say, Kostas Lukas, Kevin Pangos, Darius Thompson, Shabazz Napier, Milutinov, Matthias Lezort.
That's a lot of names.
Vezenko is not available. From the forward position, maybe that's it. Yes, Dorsey.
Lucas.
Let's say Dorsey is the free agency. Shavon Shields, point guards, Lucas, Pangos, Thompson. Yeah, pretty much it. A lot of interesting names. So how
I need to pick 3 only.
If there was this draft.
Mirotic, Lucas, Dorsey, Milutinov, Pangos, Shields, Thompson,
Punter.
I would go with Punter.
Mm-hmm. Number 1 pick, right?
Oh, you mean to rank as well?
Yes.
My 3 would be... Okay, there's Mirotic, Slukas, Punter, and Napier. One gotta go. One we have to cut one, right?
Shields, you're ruling him out?
Is he a free agent?
Yeah.
That's tough.
That's a tough conversation.
That's tough. I can't really decide right now.
But who's your number 1 pick?
I probably changed my mind after this.
Yeah, for sure. We're speaking on the spot.
It depends of what I need for my team, but so.
Let's say you're Panathinaikos. You're building the team from scratch.
But I can't take Kostas Lukas.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
So that's what I mean. It's if I'm Panathinaikos, my number 1 target.
Kevin Punter, for sure. Smart player who knows how to utilize the freedom he gets from his head coach, who can also set the example with his leadership to others by his example, not being very vocal, but leading by example. It would be a perfect fit.
I think Punter. Yeah, Punter.
Amazing scorer,
Shields.
perimeter player. Yeah. What's interesting...
Punter, Shields, and then Napier.
Okay.
For Pau.
Panathinaikos, yeah.
But Kostas Lukas is a guy I would want to have on my team.
Mm-hmm.
He's
definitely in my top 3 or top 5.
Guy was on 10 Final Fours in 12 seasons.
He's like a Final Four lock.
Final Four ticket for your team. And there are other names here, great, but Punter, Napier, Shields, or Slukas. I don't know.
I'm low with bigs.
Yeah,
I
but
don't see
Nikola
Mirotic
is...
Or Mirotic, yeah.
It's crazy to rank him at the 5th position. I don't know. It really depends on... I can't give you 3.
But, with so many stars potentially moving, it's going to be very interesting for agency.
It's going to be I hope it's going to be a really different picture in the EuroLeague next season, because I think we kind of need some fresh air and some teams need big changes. So I hope that these players are going to change teams, because even though I don't think Kostas Lukas is moving, I don't think Shavon Shields is moving.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
You can actually put your ranking of your top 3 agents list for, let's say, a random team, for a Dubai team or whatever, with no background, with no head coach in place. So it will be really interesting to hear your points. And since we show a lot of love to the domestic league finals and the playoffs, basically it's finals with the exception of the Turkish league semifinals.
And we will talk about Spain as well when the finals come. Now the ABA League finals.
They are set to start on Tuesday.
Exactly.
Turkish league finals. Karşıyaka, our co-host Eric, is there after his
finals.
Amazing game winner against Turk Telekom. Turk Telekom, their final series against FS kicks off on Tuesday as well. So yeah, a lot of finals.
There's still plenty to talk, and we are going to watch those finals and
as
much
much as
about
possible
in the upcoming weeks. So So stay tuned. Don't be sad if we didn't talk about Spain in the comment section. We are going to do that, but we can't cover every league in every podcast. So
and show us some love as well. You can do it either by pressing like button under this video, subscribing our channel, or joining BN Plus community on basketnews.com/plus. Thank you all for watching, and see you very soon. Probably with the Q&A podcast this week, and Rytis Vyšniauskas on it. So yeah.
If the Nuggets win today.
Yeah, probably.
See you guys.